Hello, I'm Huscho, and welcome to So Wrong, So Right, my show where I read series-based fiction, including but not limited to official tie-in novels, of which this is one, Supernatural Nevermore by Keith R.A. DeCandido. This time we start Chapter 2, Bull's Motel and Lodge, South Bend, Indiana, Wednesday, 15th November, 2006. That's a problem with the job, Sammy. Sometimes you hit a dead end. Sam Winchester silently agreed with his brother Dean as they did their final check of the motel room before hauling their stuff out to the car. Their father had drilled into them from a young age always to scour a room before checking out, as it wouldn't do to leave personal stuff lying around. This is just kind of funny to me, that, thinking of John Winchester talking about personal stuff. I know he's not talking about, underpants and tampons, but it just strikes me as hilarious actually having to have this conversation with their father, especially when some of that stuff included exotic weaponry and ancient grimoires. Generally they were good about cleaning out the room. There was that one time in Key West when Dean had left this tin of salt next to the bed, and he'd insisted on turning the car around on Route 1 and heading back to retrieve it. Sam had asked why they couldn't just go to a supermarket and get another one. It was a pretty common household item after all, but Dean had insisted that it was the principle of the thing, which had been fine right up until the clerk asked why the two brothers had a big tin of salt in their hotel room, and Dean had gotten that wide-eyed look he got when somebody went off the script. With Sam watching and not even bothering to hide his grin, Dean had stammered for about half an hour before coming up with something about lactose intolerance. "Dude," Sam had said, as they went back out to the car, retrieved tin in hand, "you do know that salt has basically nothing to do with lactose intolerance, right?" "Thank you, Mr. Wizard," Dean had replied through clenched teeth. "Okay, I don't know why you would feel like you have to explain yourself to a clerk, especially having to go on for like 30 minutes about something. Like, it's kind of an amusing story, but I really don't know why anybody, at least of all Dean Winchester, would feel it necessary to go on about this to a motel clerk. Like, you just say, we just had it in case, I don't know, the car got iced over. If it wasn't winter, you say, well, I like to cook, or you can never have too much salt. Like, maybe you just like to have salt with you because a lot of health-conscious places have less of it anymore. I mean, there are so many different explanations, but you don't need to give any explanation to a motel clerk that has something that is yours that you accidentally left behind. You just say, we left it behind, that's really none of your business, goodbye. You'll probably never be there again. Like, maybe you will, but you probably won't. Like, I'm just gonna guess that Dean and Sam Winchester are never gonna be back at this Key West hotel, although I have never actually seen them be in Key West in the series, or anywhere close to Key West, so I don't know, maybe I'm not a good gauge here, but it seems very odd to me. Today they were checking out and hitting the road, their latest job not having been a job at all. Dean was still talking as they headed out to the car. "But at least we got to see beautiful downtown South Bend. Yeah, a real hot spot," Sam muttered as Dean opened the trunk. "Hey, we go where the jobs take us. Or don't. It really was a suicide, Dean. Or normal, run-of-the-mill suicide." Dean shrugged. "It happens." He tossed his bag into the rear of the trunk, rolling it over the boxes of weapons and supplies. Sam did likewise, only using his left hand, as his right was still in a cast from that zombie girl broke it back in Lawrence. Sam didn't have the same attachment Dean did to the black 1967 Chevrolet Impala, the family car their father had passed on to Dean. That sounds awkward somehow, but I guess he did have to say a 1967 Chevrolet Impala, and it is kind of essential that people know exactly what it is, although if they've seen the show, they probably know what it is. And I can't imagine someone who hasn't seen the show picking up a book and being like, I'm just going to read this. I'm going to read this for an idea of why people like the show. I don't know. Sometimes I guess they do. I don't know sometimes what the audience is for series tie-ins. So when the car was wrecked a couple of months back, Dean had rebuilt it pretty much from scratch, a process that took weeks of back-breaking effort. However, even Sam had to admit that the massive trunk was a great benefit, given that they had lived their entire life out of this car. The rear of the voluminous trunk was taken up with 3 bags: Sam's bag, Dean's bag, and the laundry bag. That last one was starting to bulge. And, all the weapons that they keep back there, which, at this point in the series, I'm pretty sure that they've shown they keep an arsenal back there. Maybe I'm wrong. Feel free to correct me in the comments below if I am. But I want to say that by this time, even in Season 2, they had started to keep a lot of weapons carefully back there. Like, I think that was even a thing before the series even really got started, because Dean and their father had used it for hunting, so there would be stuff back there. And I'm pretty sure after Dean worked it into serviceable shape, he probably built it up a little bit better than it was before. Dean Winchester, you know. "We're going to need to do a laundry run soon, man," Sam said. "Not here," Dean said quickly. "I don't think that cop was too thrilled with ace reporters Anderson and Barr. We better split before he decides to run my face through his computer." Sam nodded in agreement. Dean was still wanted for a series of murders committed by a shapeshifter taking his form in St. Louis earlier that year, and there was just no way a mutated freak who looked just like me did it was going to fly with the U.S. Attorney's Office. Although this was also a weird part of the series, because there was like that one episode where Linda Blair was in it, and they had all that crap going on with the boys being wanted and everything, and she said she'd clear it up, and until we got into that crap in season 3 where we found out that she hadn't, or that that FBI asshole had a bug up his ass about getting Dean for some reason. Season 3 syndrome, am I right? But I don't know, I thought that the whole skin thing was kind of tied up by now. Maybe not, I don't know. Dean closed the trunk and they headed to the main office. Like most of the places the Winchesters stayed, the Bowles Motel and Lodge was dirt cheap with minimal amenities. Yeah, minimal amenities and dirt cheap, but they always look neat and clean, and they always look quirky. Like, there's always some motif about supernatural motels. I have stayed at places that must have cost 2 or 3 times as much as the Winchesters paid for theirs, and they didn't look as distinctively quirky or clean. I guess it's one of those things where it's like, you want to believe that they have this hard life on the road, you know, and they're hand-to-mouth investigators outside the box, you know, the box of society, the box of the mainstream, but you don't want to go too crazy. All they needed was a roof, a bed, and a working shower, though the latter was hit and miss with some of the places they stayed. Ooh, they should extrapolate on this. And they weren't exactly rolling in dough. Fighting demons and monsters and things that went booga booga in the night was important, but it didn't pay. They lived off credit card fraud, Dean's pool and poker winnings. That meant the Hyatt was not an option. They entered the shabby office, which had cracked wood paneling, a badly stained beige carpet, and a pock-marked front desk. An older woman sat behind that desk, puffing away on a cigarette while sitting under a red no-smoking sign and reading a Dan Brown book. Any of you who are not familiar, this actually does paint a very accurate picture of small-time Motel Americana. Her face was caked with enough makeup to allow her to attend a Halloween party as the Joker, and her hair was sprayed within an inch of his life into something that probably wanted to be a beehive. I have to say, I love these turns of phrase. Like, this is good. Like, all of this chapter so far has been pretty good, I feel like. The first chapter I was a bit more harsh on it, a bit less forgiving, and I felt like it didn't really give us a good lead-in. But this chapter is great so far. I hope it can keep it up. Sam was fairly sure he could have hit that hairdo with any weapon in the Impala's trunk. Oh, there we go. So I was right, and not done a lick of damage to it. She wore a name badge that said Monica. "Hey," Dean said, "we're checking out." Monica took a final puff on the cigarette and stubbed it out in the ashtray. "You're Winwood, right?" she asked with a scratchy voice. Sam managed not to roll his eyes. Just once Sam wished Dean would pick an inconspicuous alias. "That's right," Dean said with a smile. "We're ready to check out." "Yeah, there's a problem. Your credit card was declined. I'm gonna need another one." There was Dean's wide-eyed look again, but this time Sam didn't smile. "Declined? Really?" Dean looked at Sam helplessly, then turned back to Monica. "Could you try it again, please?" She gave Dean a withering look. "I tried it 3 times. That's all they'll allow." "They say why?" No reason. You want to call the credit card company? You can use this phone." She picked up the desk phone, which, Sam was appalled to see, was a rotary dial, and held it up for Dean to take. God, Sam, it's only 2008. It's not like rotary dials don't exist anymore. They still are out there. No, that won't really help." Sam realized why Dean was stalling. He had other credit cards, but none of them said Dean Winwood on them. Quickly, Sam stepped forward, reaching into his back pocket, and said, "I'll get it." He removed one of his own fake credit cards from his wallet and handed it to Monica. She took it and stared at it, which Sam had been hoping she wouldn't do, since this one didn't say Winwood either. Oh, you two was brothers. Without missing a beat, Sam said, We are, but I was adopted. By the time I tracked down my birth parents, they had both died, so I changed my name to McGillicuddy in tribute to them. Oh, that was good, that was good. Monica's face split into a rictus that Sam supposed could have been called a smile. Shady, shady, shade. That's so sweet of you. What a nice boy you are. She ran the card through the machine, then entered the total for the 3 nights they stayed. The wait for the machine to check was interminable. Dean, to his credit, had recovered, and he had his best poker face on. Finally, after several eternities, the machine beeped and the word approved appeared on the small screen. All right, Monica said, still smiling as the whir of a printer could be heard under the desk. Here's your card back, Mr. McGillicuddy. Thank you, Sam said, retrieving it and putting it back in his wallet. Such good manners. Mr. and Mrs. Winwood obviously raised you both right. Dean smiled. Yes, ma'am, they did a bang-up job. Monica then handed the printout as well as the credit card machine's receipt to Sam. Just sign here and you can be on your way. Once that was all done, they went back outside. Nice save there, Samich, Dean said with a grin. I've never heard him call Sam Samich. That's pretty good. I'm guessing that's a sort of a portmanteau of Sam and bitch, or at least close enough to satisfy Dean so that he can get away with saying something like that without Sam giving him that look. You know, I'm finally starting to get it. Sam frowned. This sounded suspiciously like the beginning of a lengthy diatribe, at the end of which would be a joke at Sam's expense. Get what? Well, Sammy, we grew up together, and that whole time nothing about you ever screamed lawyer at me, so when you told me you were applying to law school, it kind of threw me. But I've been watching you the last year, and I think I figured it out. Here it comes. Sam tried not to groan. You can shovel manure as good as everyone I've ever met. That line you pulled on Monica there with the adoption? Beautiful. And with a straight face. In fact, Sam's skills at lying, both in terms of pretending to be someone else and also misleading people as to the true nature of his life and the world itself, had been one of the things that attracted him to the law. His life as the child of a hunter of supernatural creatures and of being trained to be a hunter himself had given him these skills anyhow, and it only seemed natural to put them to good use. That wasn't what he told his brother, though. Yeah, I can pull the wool over people's eyes, and I do most of the research and know most of the lore, and I'm good with the weapons and the hand-to-hand. They arrived at the Impala, and Sam gave his brother a grin as he stepped up to the passenger door. So, what do I need you for exactly? Before Dean could construct a reply, his phone started playing Deep Purple's Smoke on the Water. For that matter, Sam added, I'm the one who showed you how to download ringtone. Pulling the cell phone out of his pocket, Dean scowled. I would have figured it out eventually. He flipped it open and glanced at the number, which caused his eyes to go even wider than they had in the office. Putting the phone to his ear, he said, Ellen? That surprised Sam. Ellen Harvell ran a roadhouse that catered to hunters. He and Dean had recently learned that Ellen's late husband died when he was on a hunt with Dad, and it put a bit of a strain on their relationship, especially since they only found out because Ellen's young daughter, Jo, snuck out and went on a hunt with him and Dean against Ellen's very strenuous objections. Years of listening to loud music and using firearms played merry hell with Dean's hearing, so he kept his cell's volume up way too loud. That means Sam could hear Ellen's tinny voice over the phone's speaker. That was a pretty good episode, I remember. I always liked Jo. She was a lot of fun. I wish they'd done more with her. Listen, she said, I may have a job for you boys. Really? 'Cause it's for Ash. He wouldn't ask himself, but I figure he did you two a favor, so you might be willing to do him one back. Ellen seemed to be barreling through the conversation, not letting Dean get a word in, or at least trying not to. Keeping Dean quiet was usually a forlorn hope. Sure, I guess, he smirked. Always had a soft spot for that mullet head. What's he need? Ellen gave the particulars of the case to Dean and did it in a lower voice, so Sam couldn't make it all out. Ash was a deadbeat drunk who was... Oh, you're an asshole. Ash isn't that much of a deadbeat. Ash is a fair genius. Ash was a deadbeat drunk who nonetheless was a genius and able to track demons via computer, a trick Sam had never mastered despite many attempts. It just seems so unfair to call Ash a deadbeat drunk. He's pretty amazing. He's an amazing character. As Dean had once said, Ash's geek foo was strong. Sam didn't entirely believe his claim to have gone to MIT. For starters, he said it was a college in Boston, and anyone who'd gone there would know it was in Cambridge. I don't know, dude. I just don't know. I think you're trying really hard, Sammy. But he did believe that Ash had the know-how, based on the times he'd helped him and his brother out. It's even possible that if he did get that wrong, it was probably because Ash was drunk and you weren't really seeing him at his best anyway, you know. Okay, we'll check it out. With that, Dean flipped the phone shut and looked out the driveway. That road will take us to 80, right? Sam tried to remember the map. I think so, yeah. Why, where's the job? Dean grinned. The town's so nice they named it twice. New York, New York. Really? Sam turned and went back to the trunk. Open it up, I want to show you something. Something in New York? Dean said, joining him at the back since he had the keys. After Dean opened the trunk, Sam took a folder out of his bag. It may not be anything, but I noticed a couple of murders that took place there. One thing about that should be 2 separate paragraphs for ease, because you start off with Dean saying something and you end up with Sam saying something, and I really wasn't sure at first, but it's clear that it is Sam saying something at the end, because then Dean replies to him. So that might be good. Also, why would Dean be so keen to go to New York? You would think that he would not be that keen to go to a big city, especially one where there's a lot of people. You would think that would be kind of a restrictive thing for hunters. That might be kind of difficult for hunters. I just don't see Dean as the big city type, especially not New York. And I don't know what he's thinking he's going to do, because, like, when you have a car in New York, it's a giant pain in the ass. Sam, it's New York. They get like 50 murders a day, which is why these 2 probably flew under the radar. He took the clippings, photocopied off newspapers he looked at in several different public libraries they'd visited recently. First, we got a guy bricked up in a building's basement. Sam handed Dean the 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper with a filler news story in a section of the New York Daily News dedicated to community news about a man named Mark Reyes who was found bricked up in the basement of a house in the Bronx. As Dean glanced over the photocopy, Sam went on, and this past Sunday, 2 college kids were beaten to death by an orangutan. Dean looked up at that. Seriously? Sam nodded. That's 2 murders that are right out of Edgar Allan Poe's short stories. That's kind of a stretch, Dean said as he handed back the story about the bricked-up man. Yeah, but where was the cask of Amontillado, Sam? Maybe, but they both took place in the Bronx, and Poe used to live in the Bronx. Plus, the first murder was on the 5th. They didn't find the body until 2 days later, but it happened on the 5th, which was the last full moon, Dean said with a nod. Yeah, okay, maybe, but... Tossing the folder back into the trunk, Sam said, and the orangutan was on the last quarter. He didn't need to add that lots of rituals are based on the phases of the moon. It's not that big a deal, but since we're going to New York anyhow, I figured we could look into it while we, do whatever it is we're doing. Dean slammed the trunk shut. Haunting. Some friend of Ash's is having ghost issues. So who's he gonna call? Sam chuckled. They both got into the car, Dean in the driver's seat. That's really weird. What, there'd be a haunting? You see him all the time. No, Sam said with a shake of his head. That Ash would have a friend. Oh, wow! Shady Sam! What the hell, Sam? You're such an asshole this time. With a chuckle of his own, Dean slid the key into the ignition. Ooh, my. A grin spread on his face as the Impala hummed to life. Hear that engine purr. Squirming in the passenger seat. Yeah, you're squirming now, Sammer. Sam thought, I swear to God, if he starts petting the dashboard again, I'm walking to New York. Do I detect a hint of jealousy? However, he was spared that. Dean shoved a Metallica tape into the player, twirled the volume up, and the car was filled with the guitar opening to Enter Sandman. Dean turned to him. Atomic batteries to power. Glowering at his older brother, Sam said, I'm only going to say turbines to speed if you don't make a comment about me in short green pants. Oh my God, it writes itself. The subtext writes itself. Dean pulled the gear shift down to R and said, let's move out. He backed out of the parking spot, then brought it down to D. I'll bet he did. He brought it down to D and sent them out onto the open road. Well, what did I think about this chapter? This was an immense improvement over the last chapter. It was lots of fun. I'm actually eager to see what's going to happen and where they're going with this. I tried to do the voices. Hope they weren't too bad. This really feels like Sam and Dean. It feels like interactions that they would have for the most part, and Dean is sufficiently low-key, dorky, and geeky enough to pull this off because he's such a geek. And he pretends he's not, but he is. And Sam puts up with it because Sam's a little bit of a geek too, but Sam's there for Dean, and Dean's there for Sam. Whatever they'd say about each other, they're there for each other. But yeah, I liked this chapter. It was fun. It had the wonderful subtext that I know we all love from the show, and you can't pretend it's not there. So yeah, this was a good chapter. I look forward to the next chapter. I look forward to seeing what's going to happen next. And I will be back with another one next time, Chapter 3. Please comment below, subscribe to my channel, follow me on social media, and consider becoming a patron on Patreon. See you next time. Bye.